Okay, so our first topic for today is intro to cloud computing. As you probably all have already used cloud computing one way or the other, or even have deployed or maintaining it. No? So this is more of a foundational course. So for this morning, we'll have discussions on cloud computing security, current challenges, benefits, and trends to cloud computing. And then we wrap it up with the key learning points and some of my references in this course. So what is cloud computing? So you had here the cloud, no? And this has been a common buzzword for quite some time. Move everything to the cloud. Well, let's do the cloud migration. Cloud is secure. So let's discuss what really is this cloud that we're talking about. Okay, to dispel them and demystify some of this aspect. So let's go back a bit to our computing history. So in the early days, we have centralized application only running on one isolated computer. I would say this is in the 60s, when computers were starting to pop up. But of course, the computers back then were a whole floor, or even a whole room. No? Hence, they're still just starting to build up, no? And this was also the time where transistors were developed and microcontrollers, no? And then came personal computing. No? This was most likely in the 80s. And now we have decentralized application. So since you have your own personal computing workstation, you don't need a big one to be able to process applications and jobs. No? So each and every workstation could run independently. Okay, but the main issue then was how do you share data? No? How do you consolidate? No? Well, there's already computer networks in the 80s, no? It's still in the infancy stage, no, for common use, no? And then came cloud computing. So cloud computing, when data centers start booming, no, likely in the 90s. We have this sort of concept of cloud computing, but we weren't calling it cloud computing back then. We're calling it data centers. And with cloud computing, you have centralized application running in data centers, and then you're connecting to it remotely. No? Either you submit your jobs and then you wait for the results, or you have an interface to that web application, and then it's being processed on the background. And challenges, of course, for centralized application is when running it close to the users, either on the device or the network itself, because these edge devices are the ones generating data, and if we had to submit it to a central location, there are some pros and cons back then. So we'll see it in a bit. Sa challenges. Okay. So these are the major cloud computing infrastructure players, from Gartner. And what we could see here is, well, of course, AWS would be leading the bunch, followed closely by Microsoft and Google. Then we have our niche players and challengers, from Alibaba, Oracle, IBM, Tencent, and Huawei Cloud. So for AWS, this was their stat. Second quarter 2022, they own 30%, 34% of the market share of cloud computing sa 200 billion cloud market back then. Then we have Azure following closely with 21%, and this is as you could, I don't know, guess, it's because it's Microsoft, and most enterprise, if not well, almost close to all of them are running Microsoft Windows. Hence, it's just logical to them, to migrate, let's say, their Active Directory or IAM to the cloud and manage and maintained by Microsoft. Because, well, who's better to maintain an Active Directory than the creator itself, no? But of course, AWS has something similar, no? Google Cloud also has something similar. And then we have, again, our challengers, from Alibaba, IBM, Salesforce, Tencent, and Oracle. Now, going to major cloud computing model, we have here the basic three. There are still some modifications, some niche types, but these are the common ones. We got infrastructure as a service, where you're basically given a bare, a computer or an instance or a compute node, where you are the one who would be managing the applications on it, and this somehow gives you flexibility, since it's basically a Linux or a Windows server that's in a data center somewhere. that you could configure to your liking, no? And then you could choose, no, your resource. Do you need more memory? Do you need more storage? Do you need faster storage? Do you need how much CPU do you need? So you could configure this. No? It's just basically uh, what do you actually need in your scenario, no? That you're gonna be the systems you're gonna be deploying. Um, this adds flexibility to infrastructure managers, no? Because used to be before, yeah, be having a cloud vendor to subscribe to, no? You would design your system, you would do capacity prediction, and typically you would want to predict maybe 5 to 10 years capacity, no, for that box. So the problem there was, well, you need to pay and purchase, no, those hardware, put it on a data center, and then on the initial stages of your deployment, you might not have that much user or workload. So you're probably maybe operating maybe 5%, 10% at most, no, for the first 1 to 2 years, no, until subscriber picks up, no. But well, nowadays we have a thing called a system or a service that goes viral, no, where there's gonna be an influx, no, of users in an instant. And that would be a problem, no? Because let's say in a year's time, no, or in a few months' time that you deployed, you're maybe just using 5-10%, no, and then your platform got picked up, no, and they want a lot of users, no, wants to subscribe to. No? Now you might have a hard time scaling that platform in an instant, no? Because now you have to do purchasing again, wait for the delivery of the servers, and then install and configure it. So that's gonna take some time, no? And the demand might not be there by the time that this hardware gets delivered. And that also highlights on the problem during the pandemic. I'm not sure if any one of you are running data centers or even just corporate IT infrastructure. No? During the pandemic, I had deliveries, no, lead time as long as almost a year, no. The common lead time you'll hear from the vendor is 180 days, no, and more. Well, because there's a shutdown, even the manufacturing has slowed down, and logistics too. So if you have a service during the pandemic that you need some hardware replacement, or just typically you want to scale, no, that's not going to be possible. And cloud computing boom, especially during the pandemic, because now you don't have to wait for anyone. You have your credit card, sign up to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or other, no, cloud vendors, and then you have your instance, no, immediately for you. Okay. And again, you could configure what you want, no? And there's cost involved, of course. But yeah, of course, you already have studied yung ROI, no, for that. So that's infrastructure as a service. But do note na you are the one maintaining the softwares and the security of the infrastructure as a service. No? So we got cases where also this was a lot. This happened a lot during the pandemic, where again they cannot purchase hardware. They need to move to cloud because it's instantly there, and thinking that cloud is secure. No, not realizing again that, well, it is secure as long as you secure it, especially for infrastructure as a service. Hence, some of them got security issues, no, and some of them were breached, no, because of the wrong way of thinking how to secure the cloud. Next, we have platform as a service. So, platform as a service, this one is well, you have a provider that well, it's in the cloud, no? And you would an example is some services like managing and developing and testing applications. No? Along with it, you have your tools through the platform. You run the test and development. I would say sample of platform as a service here would be GitHub, Docker, and Kubernetes, no? So for mainly for continuous integration and continuous deployment workloads, no? So we got that. And then lastly, we have SaaS, no? Software as a service. Here is, well, as a subscriber to SaaS, you would not be the one managing the back end. No? So it's again it's software. You're being abstracted to the hardware on the back end. Um, the vendor would be doing the patching, maintaining, adding features. No, you just use. the system, no? Either via a web browser, an app, or an API, no? So, sample here would be maybe Microsoft 365, G Suite, and the rest. No? That's a web-based system. Maybe you could also plug in here Spotify, Tidal, no, for audio streaming service. Because well, technically you're subscribing to the stream, no? But then you are not managing the platform, you are not managing the infrastructure, so you could consider them software as a service. Okay. Now, for the types of cloud computing, we have a private cloud. So these are applications that are hosted, no, on your server on the intranet, no, within your organization. And with this, no, you are responsible for managing, upgrading, updating the software, system security, and other resources, no, including power and cooling, no, and space, of course. So there are still organizations that has private cloud. Actually, there's a lot of Philippine organization that I would say have some private cloud, no, and they are using technologies because, of course, there's not you can't deploy AWS here, no. It's on your own, no. Typical technology that you would need, no, and deploying private cloud would be Zen, Citrix. Also got VMware, no, and Proxmox. So that's some technologies that you might want to take a look at if you want to deploy your own cloud environment or um, yeah. But again, you're the one maintaining it, even the hardware. No? You'll be the one purchasing and deploying it. Even the bandwidth, no? It's on you. You have to subscribe to telcos bandwidth, no? And configure your network. And then you have your own hardware firewall to protect your infrastructure. Okay, so that's private cloud. Public cloud, well, this is where the provider, no, installs the software on the server. Okay, but basically it's the operating system, no, and gives you access to their interface, no, and use the service. And typically, the provider would be responsible for most of the management on the back end. So if there's any power issue, there's any bandwidth issue, there's any cooling issue, no, that's gonna be part of the provider, no. And let's say there's a hardware failure, you're abstracted from that. They have redundancy. They would be able to recover with minimal or up to no disruption, actually. And they're also doing the upgrades, no, and maintenance and security to a degree. No, again, there is a what we call shared responsibility model, which we'll see in a bit too. Now, since some scenarios, no, could not be solely deployed on private cloud or on the on the reverse, no, it cannot be solely deployed on the public cloud. We are seeing a lot of hybrid cloud. So this is a mixture of both private and public solutions, where you'll be in charge of handling and managing these two, no? Public and private services together. And one of the main concerns here now is passing the data in between these cloud services. No? And a lot of organizations here in the Philippines are at this stage, no? Hybrid cloud. Especially the older organizations. No? Most of startups, you could see they're mainly in public cloud, no? Or mga fintechs and tech startups. No? So they would be they have cloud first policy, so they would deploy everything in the cloud, and what they have here on-prem would just be workstation. But for traditional companies or those that have been there pre-cloud computing days, no, they would have some sort of a hybrid cloud where they have still their own data centers and virtualizations on-prem, but they have solutions, no, and workloads in the public cloud vendors hosted by public cloud vendors. No? And again, um, issues that they would normally be encountering is, well, syncing data between two. No? Well, there are solutions and controls in place, no, to figure out which has the latest data, and do you lock certain systems, no, to read only in case the sync hasn't been completed yet. So it's pretty robust nowadays. No? So there's not much issue aside from bandwidth, no, which we'll also see in a bit. Okay, so let's do security. So cloud computing security. You probably heard this tons of times, no, that cloud is secure. So let's move our systems to the cloud. Okay, so there is what we call a shared responsibility model, and this is the part where uh, a lot of the IT guys are being blindsided. No? They thought that everything here would be managed by AWS, but since there's a lot of queries, I guess, to AWS even in the early stages where diba, I moved to the cloud, why did we get breached? No? And AWS released this na, okay, you got breached because, well, officially, no, based on our contract, we're actually just maintaining the orange part. No? Above that would be your responsibility as the customer. So, especially for EC2 or infrastructure as a service, right? So, network traffic protection, the encryption, the integrity of data in transit, that's on you. The file system, no? If there's any encryption that you want to put on your operating system, file system, and or database, no? For that matter, that's on you. The firewall configuration, no? If you made it by mistake or whatever, no, to allow any, then that's on you. That's why you got breach, no? And the passwords, no, identity access and management. So you go up here, even the patching of applications, no, that's on you. So if you have your system with a password of password 123, then I don't think you could blame AWS really, no, if someone gets access to your system because of that, no. And ultimately, the customer data is your responsibility. So you do risk analysis, no? If you deploy to anywhere, not only on cloud computing, and determine that if the system do get breached, no? What kind of controls are there to one, prevent them from getting breached in the first place? Like maybe firewall, that's a preventive control. Antivirus would be a detective control, no, in case something goes wrong. AV should be able to detect any issues there, no. So you put that in place, and then after all the control and the cost involved, now you would have a committee, no, to determine if that is a good investment, no. Then you decide if you want to move to the cloud or any platform for that matter. Okay. Now, of course, since Azure is close second, no, to AWS, they also have this shared responsibility model, but now they defined it a bit more granular, no, than how AWS designed it, where they have some sort of, I would say, marketing here, no, that says that, okay, we have here the three different types of cloud computing, no, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, and you have your on-prem. And I would say this is some sort of the marketing here that if you are on-prem, now you are responsible for everything. No? So if you want to transfer, no, the risk and operations, no, to a provider, no, to help you minimize your cost on that aspect, yeah, you could do infrastructure as a service where physical host networks and data center is actually the responsibility of Microsoft, no. But as with AWS, you could see here that OS networks, applications, no, and data, no, that is within the control, no, of the customers, no? So you can't really pass that, no, that responsibility to anyone. It's on you. And as you go to the left, no, from platform as service, software as a service, no, a lot of this is getting maintained, no, by the vendor. So you got less and less responsibility, but that responsibility is, well, basically the crown jewels of your organization, which is your accounts and identities, and of course your data. And uh, no cloud vendor would be sane enough to get responsibility for those items, no? Especially if they don't have control on how you configure your stuff. Um, like as mentioned, if your users use weak password or they're not educated enough to spot and detect phishing emails, and they get compromised, no? Of course, that actors would have access to your data at some point, no? So in regards to cloud computing security, no, there is a group, no, called Cloud Security Alliance, no, CSA, that is releasing, no, a framework for uh, cybersecurity control in cloud computing, and they are in version 4 of the Cloud Compute Control Matrix (CCM) V4. It's not even I would say a high tech tool, no, but it does cover, no, most aspects that you would see that cloud computing vendor should be providing, no. And if you have a vendor, well, most major vendors would be compliant to this one, no, but and have tweaks no, for specific domains and controls. I would say that if you are evaluating a cloud vendor, especially the newcomers, no, and they cannot comply or have a control on the 17 domains and 197 controls, then you might want to reconsider, no? Or again, check out, no, is the cheaper implementation in vendor A with less security controls gonna be in the long run better than vendor B, which has all this control but times 10 the price. So again, you would evaluate this based on your risk appetite, which would be better. So with this tool, no, you could systematically assess no, cloud implementations and provide guidance no, on which security controls should be implemented by which actor no, within the cloud supply chain. And to see no, the different domains, no? We got audit and assurance, application and interface security, and a lot more. No? So just not gonna read this for me. And then got here a good um, intro no, to the Cloud Security Alliance Cloud Control Matrix V4 from NCC Group with the link below. Okay. So, in Asia Open Run course, no, we would be requiring the students, no, just to give you an overview then of what are some of our activities, no, to subscribe to free cloud computing tier. No, so GCP, AWS, and Azure, they have free tiers. No, not well, if this is the first time you're hearing it and you want to get your feet wet in cloud computing, you could subscribe to AWS, GCP, and Azure and they will give you an instance. No, it's a micro instance, minimum memory, minimum CPU, minimum storage, but at least you get to feel no, how to log in remotely, how to use their UI. So again, just getting your feet wet and getting you introduced no, to cloud computing. And for our students, no, let's say for they set up an AWS free tier, this would be the requirement. No? So you go to AWS free aws.amazon.com/free. Then, unfortunately, you're gonna be needing email address and credit or debit card. So, uh, there is a hit and miss for Maya or GCash virtual credit card, but in case you don't have your own credit card no, from typical banks, no, you could try out no, Maya and GCash for this one, and you could have a micro instance on AWS for a year with a public IP. No? Now you could log in remotely, do SSH, install some applications, no, and destroy it, no, in case it goes wrong. That and then recreate. So this is a good again. This is some sort of again one of their marketing tool no of the cloud vendors to help you get acquainted no to their service, to their interface, to their API because well they gave you for free no? A year worth of a micro instance no? But you don't expect no to run a heavy usage website there. Maybe some personal blog, some synchronization server, and just to try things out. No? That would be good. And of course, if you need more heavy duty and more capacity, no, you will most likely be subscribing to um, yung mga ano, common commercial tiers nila. So next section is challenges into cloud computing. So you have here discussion on five, no? Security, compliance, vendor lock-in, data migration, and bandwidth. So for cloud, no, as mentioned, that when you hear no cloud is secure, you show them your shared responsibility model. No? So it is secure up to a certain degree, and then the rest would be your responsibility. So if you're not into securing the infrastructure on-prem, no, there's a chance that you might not be the guy no? to be the one maintaining the security in the cloud. Because I would tell you now that security in the cloud environment is much more complex than on-prem. In on-prem, you have your perimeter. Once you close off, typically you're secure, no? But that's not how I would design it, no? So even within the internal space of my on-prem deployment, now we have what we call zero trust, no? So even those machines within your infrastructure, you don't trust each other. You verify, no, each and everything that's gonna be requested on each of components because you never know. No, one of those box could have been compromised, and it's the attacker doing the request on behalf of that box. No, so and I would say cloud computing is more complex to secure because there's a lot of services, there's a lot of interfaces, and a lot of tech is getting deployed as we speak. No? The UI you might have now might not be the same UI by next week. No? Because again, there's a lot of development and R&D in cloud that's also being fed directly to the service immediately. And if you are not putting up to speed, no, on what's out there, no, on what's the configuration, what's the features, no, you'll get left out and you'll leave your systems vulnerable, no, and exposed. No? So, um, like on this article, no, although yeah, almost a decade back, where AWS console breach leads to demise of a service with a proven backup plan. Because well, what happened here was well, they probably put all their eggs in AWS and even the backup, and someone got phished. Someone likely got phished in their organization, and the threat actor had access to codespaces.com's AWS console, no? And started ransoming it. And when the threat actor sense, no, that they were trying to restore, they just deleted everything. So that's going to be a major problem. So DICT, they have a cloud first policy. This has been there since almost I think 4 or 5 years ago, no, when I first heard of this. Where if there's any government system, no, they would say that okay, uh, don't host it on-prem, do a cloud first, no? And them saying cloud first policy does not necessarily mean go to AWS immediately, no? There's also a DICT cloud, no, na you could subscribe to, okay? But now of course you have to do cost benefit analysis, no, or how do you call this? Which one is more appropriate on you? And uh, there were some hesitance before with government agencies moving to the cloud, no, because of data sovereignty and the likes, no. But um, we've also been seeing, no, a lot of government agencies having their workload and email systems, no, to the cloud. Say, uh, there's a lot of governmental department, no, that has their emails in Google Workspace and Office 365. So we are slowly adopting to cloud, no, and that's mainly because most likely when they did their cost benefit analysis, no, uh, they realized that the email systems in the cloud of Microsoft and Google, no, their technology on filtering and uptime, no, they are leaps and bounds better than our IT guy maintaining their own email server locally. No? So again, in the shared responsibility model, a lot of those patching and maintenance is already done, no, by the vendor, and you're just left, no, to maintain your users, no, identity and your customers' data. And that made it a bit more simpler, no, to decide on why to move to the cloud. Um, and most of our IT personnels here, no, are already overworked as it is, no, and now they'll have to do the patching, the testing, and the maintenance of this, no. That's when you move to cloud computing email environment, no, it gets offloaded to them, no. They just have to maintain the accounts now. And ensure, no, there's a breach, most of the system would be able to detect it, like maybe we're from the Philippines, no, and then suddenly someone from maybe Nigeria logged it, no, to your inbox, system would alert that it's likely an impossible login. Okay? And you could get the IT would get flagged and start doing remediation immediately on that account. There's also a Philippine specific compliance, no, for AWS, like for financial institution under BSP, no. There's the BSP 982 workload, which means well AWS would be compliant. Hence, a lot of banking systems are already being loaded to AWS and Azure, no, because well they are basically complying with BSP 982, circular 982. Okay, and other compliance program, no. If anyone would still ask, this is their trophy cabinet, no, na AWS is certified with ISO, GDPR, compliant, PCI DSS compliant, SOC compliant, and I would assume that our local on-prem might not be compliant to even one or two of these, no? So, but again, they are compliant on their infrastructure side, no? Depending on your service, you would need to be the one securing it in terms of security and privacy, no? And you could also certify your applications, no? That's not when you put your applications in the cloud, let's say in AWS, no, it does not necessarily mean that you're automatically ISO certified. Uh, that the system is ISO certified. The infrastructure hosting it is ISO certified, but the software on it, it's gonna be within your context. So you need to have your own ISO certification compliance. Next problem we have is, well, vendor lock-in. So if you are a main user of AWS, it's gonna be a bit hard for you to move to DigitalOcean or Oracle or Azure, no? And I would say as a company, no, each and every one of them, they would want to retain their customer. So one of their retention mechanism is they would put in a lot of services that you could subscribe to and make it easy for you. Again, they have a lot of services that you could subscribe to that might not be available on other cloud providers, no? And their tooling, no? And let's say their command line and APIs, no? Is of course only gonna be working, no, on their platform. So there are middleware solutions that translates, no, to multiple cloud vendor where you have an API that I want to create an instance, and then you could choose, no, I want this on Azure, on AWS, or on Linode or Google Cloud, and it does the translation for you and connects to those services and instantiates for that. So that's uh, mainly for, no, multi-cloud environment, no. And I would say doing multi-cloud is actually um, not only better, no. It might be necessary, no? Again, you don't want to put your eggs on one basket like what happened with Code Spaces a while ago. Um, but lessons learned. I mean, these cloud vendors also assess, no, their security and the lessons learned that they are encountering on various issues of their customers, and they are putting up solutions for it. No, let's say uh, for Azure, no, even if you delete emails, no, it's still being held, no, for quite some time, no, for an admin to be able to recover in case it's a threat after deleting these phishing emails, no, to hide their tracks, no. So or AWS being S3 buckets being deleted, no. There are now solutions that you could make it that it could retain it for quite some time after deletion for restoration, just in case. So they are researching, they are doing their lessons learned, and they are feeding it back to their services. No. Next issue we have is data migration. So you want to move to the cloud, and you have, let's say, 1 petabyte of information in your on-prem service. No? Imagine moving that with the bandwidth and the cost of bandwidth here in the Philippines. No? Moving it to the cloud would take some time. And I got this issue similar to that. No? They want to move the data to the cloud, and when they computed, no, it's gonna take them 3 months, no, to migrate all their data with their current bandwidth. And if they upgrade their bandwidth, well, telco um, problem here, no, is the cost. No? So we have one of the highest cost of bandwidth in uh, Asia. No? And that entails, no, you would need that bandwidth to be able to move to the cloud. And secondary, once all your data is in the cloud, you would have to retrieve it one way or the other, no, for processing on-prem on your workstations. No? So you need bandwidth back. And some cloud providers charge bandwidth based on the directionality. No? Of course, there's also cost to them. So if you are a heavy usage of their network, you're gonna get charged at some point. And a lot of deployment that I have encountered did not consider this. The cost of the bandwidth here in the Philippines and the cost of the bandwidth in the cloud. Only to realize while in computing it, no, their supposedly return on investment did not make sense after 6 months. because their system uses a lot of bandwidth. And let's say on the case of AWS, uploading to AWS is free because they want your data. Downloading your data is another issue. No? They're gonna charge you per gigabyte. No? So again, depends on how you would take a look at that. No? So what are the benefits of well, cloud computing? No? We got futuristic use case, no? So especially with Open RAN, no, and 5G, autonomous vehicles, no, they need hybrid ecosystem. No? You have hosts that process data close to the endpoints for real-time responsiveness. Because again, if you have a self-driving car, you don't want to have that self-driving car see, no, a person crossing the road while on, let's say, 60 kilometers per hour run, no? And have that sensor, no, as the cloud, no, should I brake, or should I just run him over, no? You don't want that. You need to have that responsiveness in real time, and you cannot have it decided on the cloud because, well, you have latency in the cloud, no? That 60 kilometers per hour and someone crossing, milliseconds count, no? You don't want to have that delay. And, well, worst case, what if suddenly your car gets disconnected, no? For one reason or the other. And now the car cannot decide, no, whether to hit the brakes or just proceed. So those type of um, systems, no, has their own central decision making within the equipment itself, no, and have the data, telemetry data for that matter, and some other updates, no, or um, information sent to the central cloud, no, for correlation and analytics, no. So another is, again, the amount of data being generated would make transmitting this, no, and storing this centrally going to be a major issue, no. Again, we discussed security, latency, responsiveness, analytics management, and governance, no. But imagine a CCTV operations, no, where you have a cloud storage. That might work at home for 4, 5, 6 cameras, but even then, you might need maybe 100 Mbps bandwidth na for a high def or a 4K resolution camera. Now imagine having a CCTV solution for a building that has 200 cameras. No? That bandwidth is gonna be massive. So you typically would want to have, no, a hybrid, no, like a hybrid cloud, have those data stored locally, and then you have some detections or alerts, no, being sent to the cloud, no, as for central analytics. And just in case, maybe knock on wood, no, the building burnt down, no, you have still some information that was sent to the cloud before everything went to dust. You also would need, no, as a benefits for cloud computing is streamline analytics, where again, with a lot of this data from the edge endpoints, no, being sent to the cloud, you got numerous analytical advantage, no, when you could do some processing on these data sets that are structured, semi-structured, unstructured, no, and you get some insights, no. This is where big data comes in. You got all this information. Now you could try to predict, no, market trends, buying patterns of consumers, or information, let's say, related to traffic. So some of this are actually being used right now, no? Let's say if you're a user of Google Maps or Waze, no, for traffic, they are using and streamlining analytics, no, from various sources. That's the devices feeding, no, to the cloud that, well, this street is congested because based on my learning, based on GPS coordinates, there are 50 cars with Waze here traveling at 3 to 4 kilometers per hour. The cloud service knows that, no, and feeds it to the other users, no, let's say of Waze, and rerouting them, no, that depending on the destination, that don't use this street or this highway because it's congested, and they would be able to reroute you. So that's analytics at work for us. Benefits of cloud is also flexible pricing models because, well, as with your on-prem, no, where you have to purchase everything and then you have to wait for it, then you have to set it up, no. With cloud computing, it's mostly OpEx based, no. So You don't have to wait for it. It's instant. You subscribe to whatever instance or service you need with the corresponding charge, of course. You would be able to use it. And with this, no, again, you don't have to um, instantiate all the resource you need for the next 5 years. No? You could even make it elastic, no? Where let's say you are a seasonal system where you only have a huge amount of traffic during sale. No? Let's say you are the likes of Lazada or Shopee. And then after the sale, no, where you have, let's say, 10 million customers, no, you need to scale up immediately. And then after the sale, no, the number of customers dies down to maybe a million or 2 million. No? And you have all these compute resources if you are on-prem na you're not actually utilizing. No? With cloud computing, no, you could downsize it na, within a few minutes, no, that no one's using. And if suddenly there's a spike, right, the cloud computing solution would be able to scale up, no, and produce cloned instances of your system and enabling it to handle large usage, no? And you could do this automatically or on schedule. So, and that makes your cost more flexible too. And of course, with the compliance, no, there's hassle-free regulatory compliance because if they ask na, well, is your data center ISO certified? No, you saw the badges of AWS a while ago. They are at least compliant to those frameworks. Then lastly, we have trends, no, to cap out the cloud computing course. So for trends, got multi-cloud, edge computing, serverless, AI, and machine learning. So at least the top two, we have already some discussions. No? So we're multi-cloud refers to, again, you have various vendors, no? In cloud computing that you are using, no? For your different use cases. No? So I've seen organizations subscribe to Azure because they're mainly operating in Microsoft environment. No? So especially for their Active Directory, no, in the cloud, and their email too, no, but they have their workloads in AWS. No, so that's possible. And with that, no, they are also doing cross backup. Now I've seen this work now where data backups in Azure, well, they have their own backups within Azure. They would ship it to AWS, and they were their justification was in case something goes wrong with Azure, no, which highly unlikely, no, but in case something goes wrong or their infrastructure gets breached in Azure, they would still have their own isolated-ish copy on AWS and vice versa. They're they're backing up their AWS infra within AWS and also within Azure. So in case anything happens to their AWS instance, they would be able to recover from Azure backup. But imagine the cost of those synchronization. It's a lot. But they did their math and they said that it works for them. So yeah, I guess it works for them. Next is a trend for edge computing. We have a separate course, no? For edge computing, as fundamental. I think we'll have it next week. So I'll also be lecturing for edge computing. But yeah, this is a distributed computing paradigm. So imagine, right? Where it used to be centralized in the early days of computing. Now they decentralized it with personal computing and centralized it back for cloud computing. Now we're trying to decentralize it again using edge computing. So it's like a rubber band. No? But there's some similarities, but and also differences. No? Because with edge computing, you have good computing power on your edge devices, but for the most part, you have issues on power consumptions. No? It's most likely battery operated for IoTs, and then you have network traffic to consider, no? To transmit those data to the centralized cloud. So, again, the premise of edge computing is there are some issues with cloud that you cannot just resolve because of physics. And I would just say, latency and bandwidth. No? You need bandwidth, and there's going to be latency. For now, we could only do maximum speed of light, but even speed of light, they have some latency. So we want, as with the similar to autonomous vehicle scenario, we want those decisions to be happening within the environment of that IoT, especially for real-time decision making that could cause harm, no, for any individual. No? So that's how edge computing is coming into play. Okay. Now, so we got three types, no, of cloud computing. No, we now have a fourth one, and there's actually a lot more. No, but this one is gaining traction. Function as a service, where you could develop your code, no, and run these applications without having to manage the infrastructure. You don't need an EC2 instance. You don't need a server. You would just create a function, and any of your apps or system needs that function. Um, AWS Lambda, Google Cloud Functions, Microsoft Azure Functions had those systems ready to serve, no, your function and return the results on whatever your user needs based on how you code your functions, of course. And if you need to scale this, in case let's say again there's a sale and a lot of users are hitting these functions, the scaling would be done automatically for you. But do note now that while it does scale, no, it is per request. You need to pay for the actual usage. So the more requests, well, the more charges gets to your credit cards. There's also AI and machine learning, lastly for cloud computing, because while you could have your own AI and ML platforms in your office, a lot of these platforms requires GPUs, which is hard to come by because of crypto mining. A lot of the cloud vendors already have them available for you. You just have to subscribe to their instances with GPUs, and then run your AI and machine learning models on them. Um, it do natural language processing, computer vision, speech recognition. So those are just some of the types of solutions that you could run on cloud computing instances with GPUs. Okay. Okay, and that wraps about our cloud computing. Got here some key learning points.